pleasure to have Consul General Colonel Sada.
Buenas noches, I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, Patricia Fernandez. I'll see you here soon. Okay. I'm delighted to be here and to share this panel with Dr. Patricia Fernandez and Julia Princeton. And hopefully I can give you a pragmatic panorama of what we do as a representatives of Mexico in the United States. Julia just put a framework of how difficult it would be the task for Mexican representatives to deal with these issues that on a daily basis are occurring in the United States. Before that, I want to thank also Karen Jackson. Thank you, Karen, for your invitation, for participating in this panel. It is a great opportunity, I guess, to debate about something that it is there as an issue that's going to be a very important one in the political scenario of the campaigns of the United States candidates, as we already have been seeing with the debates of the two candidates of the Republican Party. And hopefully so. In Mexico, we do not have the same reaction because, as you know, we are also getting into an election for President of Mexico, and it's going to be next year, July. So it is even before that. So every 12 years, we have the coincidence of having the two presidential elections in the same year. And well, we have already seen something, but hopefully so Mexico, it is not the issue once that the candidates are officially being debated. Let me tell you that my background is something that perhaps could be interesting to mention from my perspective, having been in the Foreign Service of Mexico for 20 years. You might think that I'm part of the Foreign Service, but I'm not officially. So I've been more in the public sector, but I'm one of these rare animals, let's say, that it is not totally part of the Foreign Service of Mexico. I make a similarity of myself with the taxis in Mexico City International Airport. There is the regular ones, there is the piratas, the pirates one, and there is the tolerados, the tolerated. So I'm in between these two. So I'm a tolerado in the Foreign Service of Mexico. But that gives me some tolerado and tolerado, because we are like 3 or 4 in the whole spectrum of the Foreign Service of Mexico. And my background also as a former mayor of my hometown, Oaxaca, Secretary of Economic Development of the state, allowed me to travel so many times around the most remote areas of Oaxaca that now that I'm a Consul General of Mexico in New York, I happen to find a lot of Mixtecos from the Mixteca Oaxaca, and there is also a lot of Mixtecos from Puebla, one, and Mixtecos from Guerrero. And also I have met Triquis from the almost coast of Oaxaca, and some Tacuates from that area, which is something that to me is very impressive because they even do not speak Spanish, some of them, and the situation is even more complicated. I would start by saying that today the strategic relationship between the US and Mexico is encompassed by what it is by some people defined, either our ambassadors, sometimes ourselves, academics, as interdomestic politics. This idea, the idea behind this concept is that today's Mexican domestic policy is intertwined with its foreign policy, to the point that both at their core basically are indistinguishable from one the other. This was impossible to say perhaps some years before. And as you perhaps have heard in some occasions, that was a saying that is attributed to a Mexican president, Porfirio Diaz, that said, poor Mexico, so far from God, so close to the United States. But on the other hand, there is another saying attributed to a Prime Minister of Israel that says, poor Israel, so close to God and so far from the United States, which is the extreme. So we are there, and now we share a border of 3,000 miles, 3,000 kilometers with the United States. Having been in 3 different locations, 4 in the United States as Consul General, San Antonio, Chicago, now New York, and one in Canada, I can tell you and emphasize that each one is different. The behavior of our migrant community, it is different. The position of the authorities is different. So we have to really learn to differentiate when we talk about the Mexican community in the United States. I regret that I missed the presentation of my friend Jorge Bustamante, but because I'm sure that he gave a lot of light into all of these issues. But this is something that has been happening since the border between Mexico and the United States was created back in 46, 48, and the Guadalupe Treaty was created. And as our friends in San Antonio say, well, all of a sudden the border jumped over us, and we were not Mexicans anymore. We were supposed to be Americans, but we never got the citizenship, so they were in limbo. And then the First World War, the Mexican Revolution that coincided, and there was a big immigration from Mexico to the United States. Then came the Second World War, and the coincidence with the Bracero program from 42 to 64. And this is also a very important issue because as of we speak, there is still some pending matters with the Braceros of that time. Even yesterday, I can tell you that I signed 14 checks for the relatives of those Braceros that had a fund that was retrieved from their salaries, and it was put in a special account, but it was never paid to them or to the relatives. So Mexican government is still, the Congress of Mexico is still dealing with issues like this. That's why when people think that any migrant workers program could be like a Bracero program, of course, we are talking of something that is totally different from one another, and I'm going to refer to that later on. And I think that at that time, Mexicans, and even today, and this is something I guess important, they do not think, Mexicans do not think in becoming US citizens. Circumstances are putting pressure on them, and they are doing so, and we, as representatives of Mexico, are encouraging them to do so, because that is the best way of protecting them. See, as you know, our Constitution was amended back in 1998, and Mexico since then allowed more than one nationalities, and at the beginning it was kind of weird for us and for them to tell them, well, you can now embrace the the American nationality, because it is not in their mind. They always come here to the United States to work, to get some money, to get extra benefits, and to send it back to Mexico and to support their families. But that's why they were so vulnerable when the epochs of the depression, that they were sent back to Mexico. They didn't have any papers, they didn't take care of getting legal documents here, and then they never got the citizenship. Now it is coming totally different when we talk with the community leaders and the communities as a whole, and they ask us, what do you recommend us to do? I said, well, become a resident, get the US citizenship, and another important issue, get the right vote, because that is so important, and it is the only instrument that it is kind of particularly valuable for the situation that we are living here. Since 1986, that the famous IRCA came into effect, it is the Immigration Reform and Control Act, and there was the legalization of approximately 3 million 3 million people in general, most of them Mexicans, of course. There hasn't been any other initiative that has passed the Congress trying to help immigrants. It's been the other way around. If you follow what has been presented in Congress, you follow what has been passed in Congress, most of them or all of them are against immigration. That's why the immigration reform is so important, because it's been accumulating so many things that now are conducing to what was described very punctually by Julia, in the sense of going to the extreme of this absurd immigration law of Alabama. What has been the role of the Mexican government? Well, our role has been sometimes more effective, sometimes more modest, But it is the role of migrants themselves that have been really crucial in protecting and helping themselves. I praise so much what they have done because it is what the capability of them to organize in different ways that have protected them from different scenarios. And the experience in San Antonio is that, well, San Antonio is not a place anymore of Mexicans arriving and staying and seeking for jobs, because it is just a city that they pass by. But at that time, I had the control and jurisdiction over the Mexican consulates at the border. If you take the Mexican consulate in Brownsville, in McAllen, in Eagle Pass, in Del Rio, the situation is different. What do we do there? It is just protection, protection and more protection. What do I mean by that? Well, if somebody is detained, we have the obligation of going to jails, penitentiaries. If somebody is deported, we have the obligation of informing them of their rights. If they are badly treated, we have this structure of lawyers that help them in support. What is the situation at the border? We do not have a Homeland Association at the border because there is no need to do so. They are so just across the border. But the opposite occurs in Chicago. It is, as from my perspective, going to be a very important one in the political scenario of the campaigns of the United States candidates, as we already have been seeing with the debates of the two candidates of the Republican Party. And hopefully so, during the United States. Before that, I want to thank also Karen Jackson. Thank you, Karen, for your invitation, for participating in this panel. It is a great opportunity, I guess, to debate about something that it is there as an issue.
Mr. Consul General, Colonel Sada.
Buenas noches, I'm glad to be here. Thank you, Patricia Fernandez. I'll see you here soon. Okay. I'm delighted to be here and to share this panel with Dr. Patricia Fernandez, Julia Princeton. And hopefully I can give you a pragmatic panorama of what we do as a representatives of Mexico in the United States. Julia just put a framework of how difficult it would be the task for Mexican representatives to deal with these issues that on a daily basis are